With the recent release of Mission Impossible 8: The Final Reckoning, the franchise has supposedly come to an end. Mission Impossible has been the most reliable action franchise for the past 30 years, with Tom Cruise at its core, continuously pushing the boundaries of practical stunts along with great storytelling to deliver high-octane, crowd-pleasing stories. So with that said, I'm going to rank each of the 8 Mission Impossible movies in this tier list to see which triumphs above the rest. Mission Impossible 1. This is where it all began. This is where we were introduced to Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. In this film, he becomes a fugitive after his IMF team is killed and framed for the betrayal. To expose the real mole, he pulls together a rogue team and orchestrates an impossible break-in into the CIA headquarters to steal a file from a pressure-sensitive vault, building to a high-speed climax atop a bullet train, complete with a helicopter chase in a tunnel. The film's cerebral espionage and iconic set pieces, especially that vault break-in sequence, deliver edge-of-your-seat tension. While the film can be a little confusing on first watch with all its subversions of expectations, a rewatch helps you really appreciate it much more. The action is more strategic than explosive in this film, but it sets the tone for Ethan Hunt as a resourceful and relentless protagonist. As the first entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, it's solid, but somewhat uneven. I think the opening is really strong, where we're introduced to this team and it completely twists on us watching them all die in the opening sequence. There are constant twists and turns throughout this story, with it revealed that Claire survived the car crash in the opening sequence, along with Jim, who is the villain of the film, who plans on exposing the identities of many of the CIA's secret agents, including Ethan, which leads to the finale of the film, where it's revealed that both of them were working against Ethan the whole time. This final act is where we're revealed to the mask pulling in the Mission Impossible franchise, which has been a staple ever since because it works so well in every film and is always so good. This film's slower pace and more suspense-focused story compared to the modern franchise, which feels much more action-based, meaning this movie doesn't have the adrenaline rushes that the rest of the franchise would later end up having and being known for. But for today's standards, this is definitely still a good movie, but it is more important for what it set up than what it is actually giving. So with that being said, I'm going to give this film a B tier. Mission Impossible 2, the second installment in this franchise, Hunt must recover and destroy a genetically engineered virus before it is unleashed by the rogue agent Sean Ambrose. With the help of Naya, a skilled thief, and Ambrose's former lover, Hunt travels to Sydney to intercept the virus. The mission becomes personal as Hunt and Naya fall in love and start raising the emotional stakes of a bioterror threat. Because the film's directed by John Woo, his signature style is on full display. Slow motion gunfights, motorcycle jousting, and acrobatic stunts. The action is stylish but often overdone a little, and the plot, though simple, suffers from melodrama and weak character development. Still, Cruise's charisma and commitment to the wild stunts carry the film, even if it's the least grounded of the series. Despite it having fun sequences and being entertaining, it's a decent movie, but definitely the weakest in the franchise overall. I think over-the-top direction, a very undeveloped, weak villain, and a flimsy narrative leave it in the bad to mid territory. It's entertaining, but a low point for the franchise overall. I hate saying that because I live in Sydney and I have a soft spot for this film, but Tom Cruise just feels like a completely different character in this story and it doesn't flow with the rest of the franchise. For example, Ethan has a completely different love interest in this film. This chemical threat is done far better in the following film, and it just doesn't really fit in with how it's got such different action compared to the rest of the franchise. But the opening is probably one of the strongest in the franchise, with him climbing up a rock. But yeah, this is definitely the weakest in the franchise because the plot's very simple and kind of meh, but it's definitely not bad. It just kind of feels generic. With that said, I'm going to give it a C tier. Average in terms of regular films, but bad in terms of this franchise. Next up, would you guess it, Mission Impossible 3. In this movie, Hunt pulls out of a semi-retirement to rescue a captured agent and face off against the arms dealer Owen Damien. When Davian kills Hunt's protege and threatens his wife Julia, the stakes become deeply personal. The race to prevent the sale of a mysterious device called the Rabbit's Foot leads to an explosive action-packed story across Berlin, the Vatican City, and Shanghai. The bridge attack in this film is truly a thrilling set piece, and this is where the film I feel like really steps into the next level and becomes good. The first half just feels a little generic and forgettable, but it gets a lot better in the third act. This is where we start to see Owen Damien as a truly evil villain. While the plot around the Rabbit's Foot is vague, the film's pacing, character stakes, and polished action make it a decent entry in the franchise. This also feels like the start of the franchise, as 1 and 2 just feel non-canon at times and just aren't relating to the wider picture, as from here on out the stories kind of interweave with each other and follow up on plot notes. Mission Impossible 3 is definitely a better return to form after the second film and probably the strongest out of the first 3, but it's still kind of good, it's not great, because the first half is a little forgettable, there is some really strong performances and great action, but it just doesn't reach the highs of the newer films. It doesn't have that spark, in my opinion, but that bridge sequence is truly phenomenal. But with that said, this is probably going to end up being a B film, placed just above Mission Impossible 1. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. After the bombing of the Kremlin, Ethan Hunt and his new team must operate off-grid to prevent a nuclear war triggered by a madman. The team travel across the globe to Dubai, Mumbai, and Moscow to stop an antagonist from launching a missile strike. Along the way, they're forced to rely on broken tech, improvisation, and trust. The film definitely defined the franchise's tone with a lot more levity and comedy where I think it's at its best. It feels like a more new age Mission Impossible compared to the older, more standard action movies. This film definitely leans into massive set pieces like the Burj Khalifa climb and the sandstorm chase. And then the cast really shines in this film with Simon Pegg having a major role as Benji, and Jeremy Renner's Brandt is really good. And then the villain definitely feels a little undeveloped, but I kind of give it a pass because everything else in the movie feels so strong. Also, I think Sabine is a really great villain in the first 2 acts. This is the movie where they truly find a good amount of humor, especially through Benji. And you also find a lot of the very iconic sequences in this movie with the Kremlin sequence, the Dubai sequence. And this film also by far has the best gadgets, like the camouflage screen, which makes a really funny moment in the Kremlin, and also the climbing gloves, which makes for that really awesome Dubai climb. They are just great in this movie. This is definitely the most fun movie also in the franchise. It's definitely my guilty pleasure if I had to say I had one. So with that said, just ticks all the boxes for me, apart from the villain being a little forgettable. I can't even remember his name. Apart from the third act being a little weak, but the first 2 acts are easily the best first act and best second act in all of the franchise, with the second act probably being the best act in all the franchise. And then that Burj scene alone is franchise defining, and its overall energy and stakes are just truly on a next level. I was so locked in first time watching that, watching it all play out, hoping nothing goes wrong, and watching it, that whole sequence, the second act is perfect. And then Tom Cruise putting his body on the line with the Burj Khalifa climb, and all of that is just impeccable. I definitely think the Mumbai sequence is still very good. It just feels a tad weaker than the other 2 parts of the film, so that's why I kind of put it down a little, but it's my favorite film in the franchise, so it's going in S tier. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is where Ethan Hunt faces the Syndicate, a rogue organization of former operatives working for destabilized former governments. And then Tom Cruise is hunted by the CIA and cut off from the INF during this film. Then Hunt joins forces with Ilsa Fast, who is a great entry into this franchise and who has very shifting loyalties and blurs the line between ally and enemy. Then the plot weaves through all over the world, accumulating in a great standoff with the Syndicate's leader, Solomon Lane, who I think is easily the best villain in the franchise. The only one that is against him is Mission Impossible 3's Owen Davian, but Solomon Lane is easily the best. There's a reason they brought him back in the following film. This film balances the smart espionage with top-tier action. Highlight is easily that underwater data heist. Great, high stakes, was awesome. The motorcycle chases in these films are always great, and once again great in this movie. This is definitely good, but I feel like there are some kind of sleeper sequences, like the cinema sequence I feel like is a little forgettable and mid in this movie. And then also the opening has one of the most famous shots in this movie, Tom Cruise hanging onto the plane. Seen a lot of memes about that, but that's just like a little tad on to the movie. It doesn't do much. This is where we get our permanent director McHugh, who's been for the past 4 movies. He's great, but I feel like this film, it does have Brandt, which is really good, but it just kind of feels forgotten compared to the rest of them. Like, I feel like Ghost Protocol's so high and Fallout is so high that this one just kind of falls a little flat because it just doesn't have the poppy moments like those do. And then Ilsa Fast is really great in this movie because you go, wow, because she's kind of the first character in this franchise that goes toe-to-toe with Hunt, and you're like, this person's really confident, and she's able to just keep up. She's fantastic, and the mystery of her character always flipping is great. With that said, I'm probably going to put this in A tier just because it feels a little bit forgettable and doesn't have the high highs of some of the other movies. Now for the 6th film in the franchise, Mission Impossible Fallout. This is widely regarded as the best movie in the franchise. We see Ethan Hunt team up with CAI agent August Walker, played by Henry Cavill. The mission spirals into a race to stop nuclear devastation. The stakes feel heavier than ever with this movie. They brought back Solomon Lane in this film because he was great in the last one. They sort of build him up to be the main villain of this film. And there's this amazing twist moment where August Walker kills the head of the IMF. And I did not suspect it coming. I knew he was planning something, but I did not expect him to be the main villain in this film. I did not expect him to go against the head of the CIA. I just thought all of this accumulated really good in this movie. The truck sequence I really like. Obviously the helicopter chase at the end is insane, and Tom Cruise doing that with stunts is insane. They also bring back Julia at the end, which is nice. It's cool to see her again. This is definitely the most critically acclaimed entry in the franchise, with jaw-dropping stunts, Cruise's halo jump, a helicopter chase through the Himalayas, and the bathroom fight is amazing with the punch reload. And then there's also amazing grounded action, emotional weight, especially with Hunt's guilt with his relationship with Julia and Ilsa. Fallout is definitely a high point of the franchise for me, but I just think all three acts are really consistent, but I feel like Ghost Protocol's Act 1 and 2 are a little stronger than all three acts. So based on that, it's a more consistent movie. It's probably a better movie overall. I just prefer Ghost Protocol. Nothing beats the Dubai sequence for me, but this definitely has the best plot twist in this franchise. So with that said, this is also going in S tier. Now we make it to the 7th entry in the franchise, Dead Reckoning Part 1. In this movie, Hunt faces the AI called the Entity, the digital threat capable of global destruction. I think it's done really well in this movie. Many governments are scrambling for control of the Entity, and then Hunt races across the world from Rome with the chaotic car chase, and then the train top battle in the Austrian Alps. This is all done to stop the Entity falling into the wrong hands. New characters like Grace are great in the movie. I do get a little annoyed at how many times she flips on Tom Cruise, but it's just kind of loyal at the end, which is good. And then also, I love seeing the White Wolf return. I think Vanessa Kirby is great as that. I do think Gabriel's a little generic and weak in this movie. He didn't really stand out. We can talk about him in the next movie, whether he gets better or not, but I think he's just a little generic in this movie. He doesn't have much of a personality. He doesn't stand out like a lot of the other villains, but I feel like half the villains in this franchise are kind of just generic franchise and the others are great. This movie definitely feels more heavy setup than previous films. Like it feels like very much an Act 1 and then like a bit of an Act 2 with a big action sequence at the end. I thought this movie flew by considering it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes. I thought the train sequence was not going to be the end of the movie, and then in the last 10 minutes I started going, this feels like the movie's wrapping up. Which was kind of crazy to me, because I thought this was like halfway through the movie watching this train sequence, because there's only like 4 sequences in this movie. They're all like 30 minutes to an hour long, but they all go by so quick, because they're so good. This definitely delivers probably the most thrilling stunt of the franchise with that motorcycle cliff jump. I think that's incredible. I kind of hated how much they marketed it prior to the movie, but it is definitely incredible. I don't think this matches the peaks of Fallout or Ghost Protocol. I definitely think it's on par with Rogue Nation. I do think it pops a little more than Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation is probably a better movie, but it just kind of seeps below the others. It just kind of is forgettable compared to the others in my opinion. But this movie I feel like pops a little more. There's a lot of cool characters, great seeing Benji. Luther kind of just leaves at the end, which kind of sucks, but he's great in this movie. So with that said, I'm going to give it A tier. It's a solid movie, but not the best. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. We have finally made it to the supposed final film in the franchise, and I'll speak non-spoiler for 30 seconds, and then we'll move into spoilers. So this film is okay. The first half is really rough, it's really just a mess. It's jumping between lots of plot points, rushing while also feeling really slow, but then in the back half the film is far better, feeling a lot more like the previous movie. You'll find this movie entertaining, just don't go in with the best expectations. I was very underwhelmed because I expected this film just to be incredible, like the last 4 in this franchise, but it just wasn't. There was zero reason for it to be 3 hours long. It honestly could have started halfway through the film and just been an hour and a half long. That would have made it a lot better. Alright, now for spoilers. Let's start with some of the positives. So I think this movie heavily leans into stunts, which is great. The last 2 stunts in this movie are incredible. The submarine sequence is truly great. I love how it is silent throughout the entire thing. That was a great sequence. And then the plane sequence was very entertaining. There was a really cool opportunity in it where it looked like Tom Cruise was going to grab the necklace, like connect the pieces mid-air, fall to his death. That would have been sick. But that didn't happen. It went on for another like couple minutes, and then Gabriel's death was pretty cool, getting his head sliced by the back of the plane. And then the other cool sequence was when the cabin fight broke out and Tom Cruise was fighting the guy in his underwear on the sub. Like the punches, they were like converting from place to place. That was really cool editing and stunt work. And then Gabriel's still a completely hollow villain. I don't care about him. He killed off Luther, he killed off Ilsa. Like, I still don't care about him. He is the most hollow thing on earth. And then, this is probably my biggest issue with the film. The characters felt nothing like prior films. I think the biggest issue with that is Benji. Benji just has no personality in this film. He's just kind of there. He isn't funny at all. And then William Dolo, who is the guy from The Vault in Mission Impossible 1 Returns, and his wife is funnier than Benji, which is insanity to think about. And I think this movie was trying to be more serious, and it just made the movie suffer. I think the comedic aspect of the last few films really worked. And those clips were sometimes cheesy, but they were part of the franchise, and it just feels kind of weak without them. I feel like also in this movie the writing felt very sacrificed to focus on these stunts, and don't get me wrong, the stunts are absolutely insane, but I feel like there's a lot of plot conveniences in this film which weren't present in prior films. Like a submarine just shows up out of the blue because Tom Cruise decided to jump out of a helicopter, just there to save Tom Cruise. Benji conveniently gets injured at the end, so then Grace and Paris are actually doing something. Why would you bother introducing them if you didn't have a purpose for them? Why do you have to injure another character to make them even useful in the ending? It's just like conveniences to make the plot move and make everyone feel useful. Also, the beginning is horrible. It just spends 2 minutes reintroducing each character and where they're at in this film. Greg Tarzan Davis's lines are practically not in this movie. He's just there because they need someone to be able to shoot people in the film. I forgot that he was in the last movie. I thought they would have been better off bringing back William Brandt or Jane from Ghost Protocol or even Zen from Mission Impossible 3. Any of those guys would have fit in because we actually care about them. And then Luther's death. The combo with Ethan was really, really good. I really liked him saying that this is my purpose, your purpose is out there. But then literally a minute later, Tom Cruise does another run that's completely unnecessary. There's like 4 or 5 sequences where Tom Cruise just runs without purpose just because you got to show Tom Cruise running. And the next scene, he's just captured by the CIA, and that could have been a cool sequence, watching Tom Cruise try and outrun the CIA and then lose. But no, Luther dies, then Tom Cruise runs, and then he's just caught by the CIA and then back in America. I feel like the big 3 of this franchise have always been, since Ghost Protocol, Luther, Benji, and Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. And Benji was wasted. He was not his own character. And then Luther gets killed off. I think the death is alright, but kill off someone else. Don't kill off Luther. He's been here since the beginning. I don't know. I feel like there should have been more deaths to ensure this was a finale instead of just killing off Luther. Also, the "I need you to trust me one last time" that was at the end of every trailer has absolutely no meaning in this movie. I thought that was going to be some dramatic moment where Tom Cruise is on the verge of dying or one of his friends are. But no, it has no meaning in the movie. It's just him having a conversation with Angela Bassett, who's now the president, who I will give her credit. I thought she was amazing in this movie. As always, she's a great actor. I really buy into the whole nuclear war because it is being marketed as the final movie and her acting is just off the charts. Anyways, the writing feels sacrificed in this film for insane stunt work. It feels very similar to Brave New World with messy writing and entertaining action/stunt work in the back half of the film. With that being said, that's going to be a B tier below Mission Impossible 1 and Mission Impossible 3. Shame, I thought this was going to be a guaranteed banger. This is probably better than what I'm saying. It's just I'm very disappointed with how great the past 4 movies have been. And this is the supposed final film. I think this will definitely be like the most mixed movie in the franchise. People will either love it, hate it, or just think it's kind of a mess. But with that being said, here is my final tier list for all the movies. Thank you for sitting through the video, and welcome to all the people that skipped through just to see it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll hopefully be uploading again soon.